What's going on, guys? I'm back here with another sports podcast, and I still don't have a name. But next Monday show, we'll have a poll in the description where you guys can vote on what name you want this podcast to be, because I have a few in mind. So, on today's show, we have a lot to talk about. Last night's games did not go as I expected, and I don't think many expected. The biggest story of yesterday's games was Kansas State versus Kentucky. Now, Kentucky was heavily favored to win the South region and move on to the Final Four because of all the upsets to Arizona, Cincinnati, Tennessee, and Virginia. It seemed like Kentucky's bracket. But Kentucky, I'm not sure what happened to them. They lost to Kansas State. And then Loyola Chicago beat Nevada. So in the Elite Eight for the South region, it's going to be a 9 seed going against an 11 seed, something that absolutely nobody saw coming. But I saw on ESPN that there were like 7,000 brackets that had Kansas State versus Loyola Chicago, which compared to how many brackets the whole entire world actually filled out, that's not much at all. So Kansas State versus Loyola Chicago is the first game on Saturday in the Elite Eight. There was another upset in the Florida State versus Gonzaga game. Florida State pulled off the upset against Gonzaga, the national runner-up from last year. And Michigan was clicking on all cylinders versus Texas A&M, so we're getting, in the West region, the 9 seed versus 3 seed. And Michigan has won 12 games in a row. They haven't lost a game since February 11th. They're, in my mind, the hottest team in college basketball heading into the tournament, and I think they still are. They didn't look very good in the first 2 games, but they looked back to form against Texas A&M, and we'll see how they do against Florida State on Saturday, which is tomorrow now. So we'll see if they can move on to the Final Four to play either Loyola Chicago or Kansas State. Now, Kansas State versus Loyola Chicago could actually be a very good game. I don't think the ratings are going to be very high for it. And Loyola Chicago has the big backstory with Sister Jean. She's like 98 years old and has been mentoring this team through the tournament, which is a pretty cool backstory, and that's captivating this nation. So maybe you'll get some viewers from that. It'll be a good game. Florida State versus Michigan will be a good game. In my mind, it could end up being just like the Texas A&M game, but we don't know. Kansas State versus Loyola Chicago, then Florida State versus Michigan, and then there's also 4 more games tonight. Tonight's games are, in my mind, a lot better than the games that were last night. The matchups going in. Villanova's playing. A lot of the blue blood teams are on the right side of the bracket, like Villanova, Duke, Kansas, Syracuse. Syracuse I consider a blue blood. They're known in college basketball. They're just an 11 seed, and they were like the second lowest at-large bid in this tournament. But they're still a blue blood team with Jim Boeheim as their coach. And then there's also Texas Tech versus Purdue, and that's going to be a great game. Isaac Haas is injured for Purdue, and that might be the difference maker in this game between Texas Tech and Purdue. Now, I think Texas Tech's going to pull off the win, and they'll go on to face Villanova. West Virginia's press defense not going to be enough to stop Villanova, a team that has looked amazing in the first 2 games of the tournament against Radford and Alabama. And I think they'll pull off another win here against West Virginia to set up Villanova versus Texas Tech on Sunday. And then I think Kansas will take care of business versus Clemson. Clemson is not a team that looks threatening. They've kind of, in my opinion, have had an easy path. Auburn wasn't as good as people thought they were earlier in the season. And if they were basing it off the team they were now, then I don't think this should have been a 4 seed. But they had so many good wins on their resume from earlier this season that that's why they're so high up. And I think Clemson's not going to beat Kansas. And Duke is going to take care of business versus Syracuse. Syracuse is another Cinderella team that's got to the Sweet 16. And I think Duke will take care of business. And that's going to set up a huge matchup between Kansas and Duke on Sunday, 2 of the most storied college basketball programs in history. And that will be a great game to watch. Very worth watching. So, this show is a lot shorter than previous ones, but that's all I have for you guys. Monday, we'll be previewing the Final Four and looking back at the games that are going to take place this weekend. So have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for listening. See you all next time.